In the early dawn of October 27, 1942, an axiom, which is a liquidation, came to the Vierge ghetto. People were roused from their houses by the SS shouting, "Jews, out! Out!" and ordered to gather in the Rhine or the market square. They were told to leave their possessions behind, but some had already hidden valuables in their clothing or prepared backpacks, while others grabbed things that were most easily carried. Panic ensued as gunshots rang through the night, many from the inside of houses that were either too slow to leave or too slow to walk. In the terrible chaos of that axiom, any random movement interpreted by soldiers as resistance met with instant death. My cousin, Clint Greenbaum, once described how on that morning his uncle, dressed and praying in their home, was murdered right there on the spot. Another survivor and the head of the Vierge Judenrat, which was the Jewish council, Simcha Mintzberg, describes that nightmarish experience in these words. This bloody day, 27/10/1942, was carved into my memory as a dark, bitter day, a day of cruelty and murder. Humiliated, tortured Jews flowed out, their feet buckling under them and their faces stricken, men, women, children, all headed to the place of gathering. A little while later, the entire town was filled by nearly 5,000 Jews, locals and refugees alike. The place was surrounded by bloodthirsty brutes led by Police Chief Becker brandishing a pistol. Dozens of Jews, men and women, were killed on that accursed day, and their names are carved in this memory book. Of those who lived, some were considered capable of working and were ordered to the labor camp in the forest called Strelnica. The rest, the majority of our people, were led toward the train station where they were loaded onto the death cars on their way to annihilation. From 7 in the morning until past noon, they stood in rows of 5, waiting to be chosen for the first of a series of selections that day. Those with work cards were chosen first and sent to the line on the far side of the square. And then those who looked strong and old enough, usually 12 or older, were pulled out to join the workers' line. After selection, they were marched or forced to run to the Strelnica labor camp. All the remaining Jews deemed unfit, meaning the elderly, the very young, and the infirm, were put in a line on the other side of the square and transported by train to the gas chambers of Geddy. Upon their arrival at the camp, on penalty of death, the prisoners were ordered to give up all their valuables and other possessions. This was a wrenching decision, as most of them knew how valuable bribery would be in that camp. My mother was assigned to make bricks at Rogalin, not far from the blast furnace where my dad had been assigned to work, where her siblings toiled in the munitions factory, and my grandmother Rose delivered food to the Germans, taking parcels of food to the barracks and the officers' residences. These teenagers had no choice but to adapt quickly to life as slave laborers in disgusting conditions. The camps were hastily built and woefully lacking in acceptable hygiene. Soon, the Majelka camp, and especially the Strelnica camp, became foul places to live, infested with lice and outbreaks of typhus. On top of the numerous illnesses, a reign of terror and murder was conducted by the camp's sadistic security chief, Ralph Willie Althoff. How sadistic was he? Well, my uncle Herschel recalled that at least once a week, Althoff would select a number of Jews to make them run in a wide circle while he randomly shot them like it was a game of target practice. Over a 3-month period in late 1942, he conducted so many mass killings and raids on the sick that the workforce was decimated, and Jews from other regions had to be brought in to keep up productivity. By late 1943, Strelnica was deemed so unsanitary that it was abandoned. My Uncle Yanko and my Aunt Lita joined the rest of their families at the Majelka. Life in these places was like walking a deadly tightrope. Inmates might be shot at the whim of any soldier or beaten with a rubber club by a cop. After the war, my cousin Miriam said of this treatment, if they didn't like you, or if they didn't like a look in your eyes, they just shot you, like you were no more than a chicken. Mom and her friends met other adolescents on the work brigades. She tells a story from her time at Majorca of loading cargo with some men, when a young Polish boy offered her some bread. Mistrustful of him, she refused to accept it. But after that, he continued to look out for her. It was at this time that she noticed a strong older boy working a crane that carried hot iron back and forth. He continually caught her eye, and she assumed that such a strong guy must be a Pole. He couldn't possibly be Jewish. Wait a minute. Little did she realize that this strong man was also keeping a close eye on her. And one day he appeared with the Polish boy to ask why she wouldn't accept his gift. My mother was shocked to discover that not only was this fellow Jewish, but he was the man behind the offers of bread. Many years later, she admitted to us that at first she'd been quite intimidated by him. After all, he was 5 years older, muscular, good-looking. But a romance was budding, even in this brutal place. His name, of course, was Moshe Weinberg, a.k.a. my dad. He'd been born and lived in a small village called Godzehan, about 30 kilometers down the road from Geddy. Moshe continued to do what he could do to improve my mom's lot in these cruel surroundings. Hoping to secure her a less arduous job, he bribed one of the higher-ups with some gold that he'd hidden in a shoe. She was subsequently given work spraying down hot iron with a hose, and whenever possible, he would try and see her at work. One of those encounters, he revealed to her that he had been carrying a photo of her, which had been given to him by her brother Herschel. He was clearly crushing for her in a big way. During their time at Majorca, both my parents were involved in an escape attempt. A boy Mom knew, named Walter, told her that some inmates were going to make a break and asked her to join. He came for her on the night, but my grandmother Rose refused to let her go. A tug of war ensued, and my mom fell and twisted her ankle. Unable to walk, she could only watch as Walter and several others, including my dad's brother Shlomo, leaped the fence. Dad himself was supposed to go with him, but when he saw that she wasn't with him, he hesitated, and in that moment, shooting broke out. He was able to slip back to his barracks while some of the others, Walter included, were killed, and still others injured badly. Uncle Shlomo was one of the few that made it out, and was able to hide successfully for a good part of the war in a Polish farmhouse. The wounded, meanwhile, were dragged back to the camp, and as a deterrent, left to bleed to death for the whole camp to see. Their flirtation continued throughout their incarceration, and it's hard to believe that under such horrific circumstances, anyone could be thinking romantically. But one has to think of their age and the resilience of youth, and the need to believe in something other than imminent death. And in what I guess must pass as survivor humor. For years, my dad would jokingly remind my mom of the time she saved his life by twisting her ankle. Thank you.